everything on the line for TSM. What a year it's been from them. And it's all now Shepard to try and stop it. Empire have come so close before, but they've fallen short and they'll do so again. TSM said trust the process. The process just won you a world championship.
There's a lot of things I could say right now. How awesome it feels to have worked my first SI, how the era of Brazil has finally been stopped, how fantastic the event was as a whole, how utterly abysmal Swedish pizza is, but I'm just gonna open this video simply by stating how good it feels to know that Gio won this invitational wearing the most studded Crocs I've ever seen.
Gio, what are those?
TSM are your new Six Invitational World Champions. Even if the new name is a little bit silly, the org has had some questionable moments throughout its history, or you find it weird that Gotcha has somehow become a World Championship winning coach, this is the reality that we now inhabit. Achieved, Bolo, Chala, Geometrics, Merc, and Pojo Man are now all at the top of the Siege food chain, and rightfully so after that performance. There wasn't a series they played that wasn't down to the wire, every game was competitive, and it shows the growth that they've had from completely switching up their game plan from Stage 3 of the NAL until now. Nobody saw this new TSM coming, and now it's the new standard. But you're not here to listen to me suck TSM off for 15 minutes. You want to hear me lambaste every other team in the tournament for being bad, and some of them were very, very bad. Let's speed through the final placements of SI 2022 from bottom to top and talk about my final thoughts on their performance. The idea of this is to make it quick and comprehensive so that this can be the last video that we make about SI before moving on to bigger things for the 2022 season. So we're started from the bottom, and it's the teams that got group staged, of which there was one from each group. And I guess it would be a sin if we didn't talk about why BDS is in this position. The specifics of this aren't publicly known, even if there are rumors floating around, and Alems has stated that we'll know in due time why BDS was forced to play with BIOS instead of Rafal for 2 games. But right now, we don't know anything concrete, and I'm not about to add something else potentially untrue to the fire until I learn more. Unfortunately, it's self-explanatory why they're at the bottom. Team played their heart out in spite of all these problems, and did manage to beat Elevate and take a map off of DZ, but this was nightmare territory if you're not playing with your starting 5. Add the big asterisk to the event for them, because they would just love to forget this and move on to the next. But in spite of that, they weren't the worst team at SI this year. That categorically went to Sandbox. Took a series off of NIP to start the tournament and then came crashing down for all 3 of their remaining games. They publicly acknowledged before the start of the tournament that Nova's coming off the team to become their coach at the start of the new season, and that just makes it look as though they phoned this entire tournament in because Nova and Harper were the worst performing players of the whole Invitational, and Envy Taylor wasn't that far above them. Disappointing is like the least inflammatory word I could use given their Sweden major playoff status, but they knew change was around the corner, so hopefully whatever that change is better than this. Cyclops were also out in groups, and I don't really know what I saw in them beforehand, but they looked like bait for much larger fish. Not a lot of excitement, and ultimately just died with a whimper. But aside from that Liquid series, that was fun. At this point, though, I'd wonder whether some change for Cyclops is in order down the road. Like, yes, they're at the top of Japan's food chain, but you look at their SI run from last year versus their one from this year, and it doesn't really help the idea of try everything crazy and win that's been the playstyle driving APAC for so long. So maybe it's time to give this squad a new spin. And the team I was most disappointed in, Team 1. Not only for letting themselves die in incredibly lackluster fashion, like essentially forgetting how to play Siege against Dom1 in that one series, but for Alamau tweeting and bitching about the format 1,700 times on Twitter after getting knocked out. It seems like they knew this was the last dance for this particular lineup heading into things, yet he then decides to be the biggest loser? Like, bow wow with a little grace, why don't you? I don't know, winning in Mexico was a fantastic story, but the gradual slip over the past 6 months just makes that victory somehow feel undeserved. I mean, it wasn't deserved at all. Empire definitely should have won that final, but this is sad to watch. Above them were the teams that got knocked out first in the lower bracket, and the highlight of this section is NIP. Last year's world champs, out really early yet again. This is a trend, like whoever won the Invitational the year prior seems like they're out really, really early in the lower bracket for the past 3 years running. They had a decent run in groups that made it seem like they were on the right track, then hit playoffs and just didn't win a map in either series. See ya bye, ninjas! Remember that dynasty you wanted to create? Talk about delusions of grandeur, dude. Like, I respect the want to carve out a place for yourself in history, but all you did was make yourselves the shortest reigning world champions in Siege history. Yes, that's more a technicality because SI last year was held 3 months late, but they were fantastic at one event and then slumped hard the next. That was consistent twice over the past year. Nice try, Nip, but I'd recommend checking the ego at the door next time. I don't make the rules. 3 European teams also got knocked out at this point as well. M&M, Na'Vi, and Rogue. M&M came in with zero expectations, survived their group, and showcased their skills to a lot more people, so there's really no way that they lost with how they performed. Na'Vi did way better than expected on all fronts, and arguably should have beaten SSG to advance further in the bracket, but also showed the weaknesses of relying on rat plays to win them rounds. And Rogue let Onigiri get 27 kills against him, which is unfortunately the only notable thing they did in this tournament. They underwhelmed in groups, then became the team that let somebody tie the kill record on. God, I want these boys to find some consistency. 9th through 12th in the bracket is where we had some pretty heavy hitters go out way too soon. 2 teams that were the number 1 seed in their group then proceeded to lose 2 series straight, and the one everyone's been talking about is Damwon Kia. My own participation in the curse aside, this one was a shocker. They were undefeated in the group stage, barring one map they dropped to Na'Vi in a series that didn't affect their seed placement at all, then lost 2 straight series to North American teams and died in the midst of their hype. Yes, admittedly, them actually getting to an SI Grand Final was a bit premature on my part, given that this team's only been together for a year, but over the course of that year, they've showcased so much growth, and it was really difficult watching them go out the way that they did. I don't even want to cheer NA on top or anything, because it just hurts knowing how much further they could have gone in these playoffs if they'd not gotten juked by, what, the pressure? I just don't know why they crumbled. The other number 1 seed gone was Furia, who also faced 2 NA teams in playoffs and just couldn't get anything going. Group stage was pretty good, but then it felt like every player got shut down one by one on an individual basis, and there was just no momentum to rely on. I saw some people calling them the budget NIP. I don't really see it. Like, Fantasy still led the team in stats, if only by a smidge, but in primetime, this team has just never looked that scary. There's just not really much to say about them, to be honest. This was also where we saw the first NA team bite the dust. Space Station. Of all teams, the North American squad I rated the highest going into SI, and they left way earlier than anticipated. Yes, even though they went out on overtime match point on map 3 to MIBR, it still feels like they had the hardest road of any NA squad. Like, Group of Death had some really close games in there, a series they should have lost to Na'Vi earlier in the playoffs, dropped 2 maps to Team Empire on their way to the grand final, and then their fates get decided by 1 round. Like, that has to suck. I'm not making any excuses for them. Like, arguably, if they had conquered all of those obstacles, they would have had a much stronger case for being the powerhouse that lots of people touted them as. But I guess somebody still had to go out first. I'd say this was expected of the best NAL team, like not being able to make it further at this point in the bracket. The whole idea of being really good domestically, but not being that good internationally. But every other team made it further than they did, so maybe that argument needs some re-examining now that SI is done. And the last 9th through 12th team was Elevate, who exceeded everyone's expectations, made a little history, and also made a lot more fans around the world. I just really miss having an APAC team full of all these likable characters. Like, we had Norarengo back in the day, and I think Elevate's beginning to fill that spot now. They did more at SI than most people thought, and that's good enough. Plus, they're also just really nice dudes in general, so I hope that they can get more events under their belt come the 2022 season. And the last 2 teams to get sent home before the main stage playoffs were 2 more NA squads, both of which lost to Brazilian teams without winning a map. Oxygen and Dark Zero. Both teams had the same amount of points in groups and then got to playoffs, and each only had 1 highlight. OXG's was knocking out Dom1 early from some fantastic coastline and clubhouse play, and DZ's was NJR and Panbazoo hard carrying that team across the finish line. So despite going out early, both still had some nice minor accomplishments that should not go unspoken. The reason I'm talking about them together is, I don't know. Now we get to the final 6. The teams that played on the main stage during the last weekend to varying degrees of success. And 2 of them just barely missed the podium. Let's start with Liquid. They started their SI run at 1,000,000 miles an hour, dropped only one map over groups, made FaZe look like chumps both times they played, and that was with literal rookies on the team. Had a super close series with TSM in the upper bracket despite losing 2 maps, and then played MIBR and just woke up too late. Like, we all have bad days, but it sucks when that bad day comes when you're literally on the brink of being knocked out. They couldn't keep the momentum from groups going for any length of time, but despite that, this was probably still the best environment they could have asked for to test the strength of this new core. Neither Ask nor Resets looked like slouches, and given some time, I do think Liquid could be right up there for top 4 in worldwide contention again, but Nesk underperforming as hard as he did is the most concerning thing of anything here. He needs to keep doing what he does best at the high level we know him to do it at if he's going to propel this team with 2 new bloods to land wins in the future. The other 5th, 6th team, and I can't believe I'm saying this, was the Sonics. Talk about a glow up, man. 2 majors of nothing but disappointment and then winning the NA finals and making the SI main stage within the same span of 2 months. Like, their international progression has been super gradual, but looks like it's paying off. It's the best Sonics forum that we've ever seen. Grixer was the highest rated player of the whole tournament despite being knocked out here. Rexon was a slaughterhouse. Kansan was a clutch master on a few occasions.
And all of a sudden it's Kansan, but a beautiful double play, trying to ride out the final 4 seconds. He has no idea where that diffuser is. SMG up. They're watching in this position. As he goes to swing out, there's both Coded and Katsang watching from this angle. Kansan, are you a miracle worker? You only need one more!
I'm really happy for the boys. They did fantastic. I don't really know if the rumors of Super retiring soon are rooted in any truth, but I kind of don't want it to happen so we can see how much further SQ can climb this year. All right, 4th place. How did they do this again? It's MIBR. We had this discussion in the green room at SI a lot. MIBR isn't really a team that many people really care about. Like, nobody on that team really stands out. There's not a strong personality. They were in the trenches of BR6 for a while, yet that's in spite of having a crazy comeback story after essentially a year stuck at the bottom of the league, injury-ridden, and they still made top 4 at SI for the 2nd year in a row. They're an anomaly that no one really pays attention to and keep making runs deeper than me and your mom last night. I don't want to come off as disrespectful for them bagging the result that they did, but it's just weird that they keep doing this. I don't know. They are a better team than the world gives them credit for, yet so few people actually seem to care. And I think I'm in that camp, but I don't know why I'm so conflicted about this. 3rd place. The last hope for Brazil to repeat as SI or major champions, undoubtedly the most consistent LATAM team of the bunch, FaZe Clan. They were the kings of the lower bracket, got sent down in round 2, then won 3 straight series 2-0, finally put MIBR's run to rest, then got to Championship Sunday against TSM, and won just 4 rounds. Why does the script say that? This just wasn't how this was supposed to end for FaZe. They looked really good throughout, unless they were playing Liquid. They were the only team in the last year that won an event and then kept that same level of performance up heading into the next event. They did it without relying on their supreme strategy, cyber go kill, as much as they did in Sweden, yet they still bit the dust in like the saddest way possible. By giving TSM a free warm-up scrim before playing the grand final. I joke, obviously, but it's still good to see that FaZe retained this level of consistent play from one premier tournament to the next. NIP didn't do that, Team 1 didn't do that, but FaZe did, and making the podium for the Six Invitational just locks them into that top spot in Brazil even more in my mind's eye. 2nd place. The runners-up of not just one SI, but now 2. And somehow for both games, Shepard was the last guy alive. Going full scorched earth at yet another invitational with aspirations of finally lifting the hammer after falling short 3 years prior, and yet again, they're gatekept. Team Empire. It's not even through any fault of their own aside from a little bit of off-play during the grand final itself. First in their group, despite 2 players playing from their hotel rooms, got to the grand finals through the upper bracket by defeating 3 straight NA teams when they were back at full strength, and even had map vote advantage to help them lock in their dreams of winning the grand finals. The ban format they selected had them pick one map before either team banned or selected any maps, and they picked Clubhouse, which for them has always been old reliable. And as soon as they lost Club, it felt like it was already over. Their play was good, obviously. We still had multiple maps in that series go to overtime, but their mental just seemed like it was super low from that point onward. I saw someone tweet that it looked like even their fist bumps looked deflated, and I was sat front row. They looked despondent. Say what you will about them deserving this win, something about that team's mentality has now cost them 3 grand finals victories that people thought they deserved. Something is in the water with this squad, and it's not helping. They get all the way up there, and they just can't complete anything unless it's the Raleigh Major or the Milan finals. So, despite second place at the World Championship, I think they also know that now it's time to break something apart. What exactly their future looks like, I've got no idea, but that tweet's pretty ominous, so we'll see what they do soon. And with that, there's only one team left to talk about. I remember watching Bolo on stream first announce he was joining a Pro League team back when he first turned 18. I remember watching all of the Pro Digests back to back to back because there were like 20 or 30 of them to binge in a row. I remember casting Chala in Challenger League, watching Merc pull himself out of the CL trenches, and Geo surviving the shame of the White Stairs EG days to find greener pastures. And now we get to see Achieved shave his head. I'm incredibly proud of TSM for winning the Six Invitational, but I feel like I'm proud in the same way that a demanding parent is proud of their kid for winning an Olympic gold medal. Like, it's a massive accomplishment, yes, but despite watching a lot of these guys for years, it feels like I'm always hard on them. It's usually for good reason, especially with how they played back in Stage 3, but this resurrection, this surge to become the best team in the world feels like the biggest sigh of relief. Yes, I'm happy I get to talk about the world champions being back in North America, but I could care less about that and more about wanting to validate the accomplishments of this group of men that I've been following since I first got into the scene. It's fantastic to witness, and it was such a joy to watch firsthand. These guys changed up their scheme and didn't give a damn what anyone else thought about as they did it. Congratulations to the 2022 Six Invitational World Champions, TSM FTX. Now, I know that there will be some people interested in my perspective on the event from everything other than just a competition standpoint, and I do want to talk about how it was to work SI, how I thought the streams were, the way everything was handled, all of that stuff. So that's going to be its own separate video coming out in the next little bit. Like, these LAN review videos are usually really long anyway, so I don't want to make this one any longer than it needs to be, and I've been recording for 28 minutes, so it's already pretty bad. It'll be a relief to get this one done because hopefully we can launch into the beginning of Roster Mania soon and look to preview this upcoming year of CG Sports, which looks pretty damn exciting overall. So hit up my Twitter, my Twitch, and this YouTube channel for all of the stuff coming out over the next couple of weeks, please and thank you. And one more time about SI, I'll see you later. Peace.